So, mashallah, you've given us these 4 conditions. That's great. I want to repent. I want to do what you've been sharing with me to do. I want to follow these steps. But deep down in my heart, I'm asking myself, will Allah actually forgive me? Will Allah actually forgive me? Take these points into consideration. Number 1, the idea that Allah will not or cannot forgive you is greater than the sin that you have already committed. Right? If you believe in your heart that Allah will not forgive you, or you believe that Allah cannot forgive you because your sin is greater than the mercy and the maghfirah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is a greater sin than whatever sin that you have already committed. Because now you are negating the power, ability, mercy, forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let that be the first thing that comes to mind. That nothing I do, no sin that I commit is greater than the mercy and generosity and love and care that Allah has for me and my well-being. Nothing. Number 2, the desire to repent is a sign that Allah wants to forgive you. Because to repent is to be guided to something that is good. And this is why Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, he says, any person who follows these 4 conditions, wallahi, they will be forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the people around them say, how can you make such a bold statement? How can you say for sure Allah will forgive them? And then he goes on to say, because Allah would never guide somebody to tawbah except that He was also willing to forgive them. There's no way. Allah would not guide you to the thought and to the desire and to give you that regret in your heart to turn back to Him except that He wants to forgive you. And that He loves to forgive you. Sometimes we think that Allah is like man. That when you make a mistake with man, they'll pardon you once, they'll pardon you twice, they'll maybe pardon you 3 times, but the 4th, 5th, and 6th, they will not forgive you. That is man. We're not talking about man, we are talking about Allah. And that's what makes Him At-Tawwab. And that's what makes Him Al-Ghafoor. And that's what makes Him Ar-Rahim. That's what makes Him Al-Afu. He's not like you and I. That He continues to forgive you happily. You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want to forgive you? You think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to punish you? You think He has it in for you? You think He wants to see you, burn? People rather say this, Allah doesn't love me, He wants to see me in the hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith narrated by Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, after a battle, they're gathering the prisoners of war. And there's a woman who has been captured and she's lost her child. And she's looking for her child. Where is he? Where is he? I can't find my child. And then all of a sudden she sees her child and she runs to that child. And she picks up that child and she immediately begins to suckle that child and fulfill the needs of that child. The Prophet ﷺ, he saw this all. The companions, they saw this all. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he looks at his companions and he says, do you believe that that woman would ever cause harm to that child? They said, never, Ya Rasulullah. She would never hurt that child. And then the Prophet ﷺ puts everything into context. That Allah is more merciful on His servants than that woman is to her child. You think Allah has it in for you? Allah wants to see you succeed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see you prevail. He wants to see you overcome that sin. This is why there's a direct connection between you and him. Don't go to the imam. Don't go to your friend. Go straight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he will forgive you. The man who loses his camel, he lost everything. He's sitting now. He's hopeless. He goes to sleep. He finally wakes up. He sees the camel. He shouts out to Allah, "Oh Allah, I am your Lord and you are my servant." He mixes it up. He mixes it up. He's so happy, he's so content that he says, "Oh Allah, I am your Lord and you are my..." He mixes it up, The Prophet ﷺ said, this is the feeling of Allah when his servant comes back to him, seeking pardon and forgiveness. Who are you dealing with? You're dealing with Allah. He will forgive you. He will forgive you no matter what you have done. Do not despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not despair ever. No matter if the world points their finger at you and calls you this and calls you that and belittles you. Don't you ever despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that was the case, do you think that the companions would have entered into Islam? Many of the companions fought Muslims and killed Muslims with their own hands. But it was through their tawbah, al-awda wal-ruju' ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that made them men and women that we talk about today and we take as role models. Never despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.